You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Knightline is brought to you by the Dever team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
All right, hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and this is Knightline 238 from the award-winning Knightline Sports Network. Joining me as always,
Roger Phipps, and on this week's show, the Pirates walk the plank. Inside the penalty box, best performers, offense/defense, position group review, pole position, 1-2-3 QB, by the numbers, college football playoff argument, and my 5-alarm hot take, inside the huddle with Kyle Israel, making the grade, and your questions in Ask Knightline.
Okay, you got your radio voice going there, my friend. You got it going. All right, so a 51-28 win over ECU, 632 yards of offense, and four turnovers on defense. What did you think about the game this week?
Well, it started off a little rocky.
Yeah, it definitely did. Just to start out, though, yeah, the penalties at the beginning were a little weird, to say the least. We'll get much more into that later on the show, but that was definitely a big deal. Yeah,
for sure. And for me, when the whole game started off weird. I'm so used to hearing the UCF Knights chant on the kickoff. I've heard that for years now, and you listen to that and you watch it and you're like, where is it? I'm waiting for it. And it was a little bit of a letdown. But, at the end of the day, the rest of the game was not a letdown. We had a lot of excitement on the defensive end. Offensively, we had, it may not seem like it, but we absolutely killed it as far as offense is concerned. Dylan had another banner day. The running backs did well. And, we came off with a big win.
Yeah, the defense, I'm extremely happy with all the turnovers that we're getting. And yes, we're letting some yards through and letting some people score, especially in the garbage time there. This game, honestly, though, in my opinion, was pretty much done right after the half. So the rest of it was garbage time for the second half as far as I'm concerned. Maybe, scoring once or twice after that, but it was well in hand. I think it was well in hand before that. We just took a little bit of time getting going after that first debacle of penalties, offsides penalties. And we talk a little bit with Kyle Israel about that, and we'll talk about it as well. Let's hear what Coach Heupel had to say on that whole situation.
Yeah, it was certainly different than any game many of us have been in since we were probably in Pee Wee football. But obviously we didn't handle that portion of it very well.
All right, well, the audio was a little bit weird from this week's press conference. They were outside where they were doing it, and there was some wind blowing and all kinds of stuff. So you get the gist of it. That is weird. I can't remember a time that I was in a game that happened like that either, probably since Pee Wee football.
Yeah, I don't think in college football history we've seen 4 straight, especially on the first drive of the game.
With no fans especially. Without the fans making noise. Now it has come to fruition that this situation had to do with ECU's defensive line barking and making, noises and saying, go and all this stuff. So I don't know if that would have been a thing, if there were fans there, if it would have been that big of a deal or not. But obviously it was a big deal, and obviously they dealt with it at a certain time. It stopped happening for the most part. And also, I don't know if that's particularly legal. And the referees probably should have said something to the ECU coaches or the players themselves about doing that.
Well, I can tell you Josh certainly said something to the referees about it. I mean, I saw him. It almost reminded me of the old Frosty jumping up and down and karate kicking people on the sidelines back in the day.
Right.
He was certainly barking in their ears. And to your point, as defenders and defensive linemen are concerned, you could see it was not just affecting one person. The entire line would jump at times, which was really interesting. Normally you see movement by just one lineman, and then they're going to be throwing a flag. But this was the entire line that was jumping at one particular time. So there had to be something going on there.
Here's what Dylan Gabriel had to say about it.
I think it was just the way they're stemming. They were saying ready, go, or just, they're saying go, move, just things that were messing with us. But I think it's beautiful. We started way back. I don't know how long it was, but it was too long. And we go out and we get the first down, we move it, and we drive down the field and we get 7 points. You know what I mean? So for that just shows resilience for us. And then, is the beauty of it. We were able to score on it. So we bounced back, and that was the main thing. Not concerned at all. It's an easy fix. And, if we don't have those penalties, we get put in good positions, and we're going to move the chain. So we just got to be better. We got to be better on that side of the part of pre-snap penalties. But we'll look back and we'll figure it out.
All right, so he's not worried about it. Are you worried about it?
Not particularly. Everything's beautiful, right? No,
yeah, that's what he says. I'm not worried about it. I know people talk about penalties all the time, and penalties this and penalties that, and we're going to lose a game one of these days because of penalties. We haven't yet. We still haven't lost a game because of penalties. And I know, yes, it takes yards away and all that.
140 in this game.
It's a lot. I'm not concerned with it, though. I'm not. Yes, it was. I was more concerned about the way that it looked on national television. But if they knew what Dylan Gabriel and what Coach said there, about all the stuff happening, people, I think, would understand it a little bit more and go, oh, okay.
Well, I think the other part about it, too, and to his point, I think our offense is in a position this year where they weren't last year, where, that Tulsa game and that Cincinnati game and a few others, where where penalties made a bigger difference than they would this year. I think our offense is set enough and has practiced enough, and Dylan understands it well enough that it won't impact it. It won't impact us and our ability to win a game in the way that would have last year.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, okay. And then Dylan, the other thing was he set a record of 18 completions in a row, and this is what he had to say about it.
I'm be honest, man. I don't care. Respectfully, I don't care about any of that. I'm just, the main goal today was get a win. That's all we can do, and I'm proud of the guys. Everyone played really well. There's still a lot to fix. You know what I mean? So you can see what we do, and without some penalties, without just minor things that we got to fix, I think the ceiling is extremely high. I'll be quite honest, I didn't even know that was a thing, really. I was just so worried about the next play. I didn't really look back on that. And, with this offense, things happen. I really had no clue about it. But, the guys, without a good block, there's not a good throw. And without a good throw, there's not a great catch. So, it all works together. It wasn't just one person that it starts up front, and then likewise making a great catch. That's the thing that happens in our offense.
All right, there you go. Yeah. So he's. I like that he's not really concerned with setting the records. He's just concerned with winning the game. So.
Well, and at the end of the day, he's in great company. KZ tied Dante for 15, and now he's elevated that game to 18. And honestly, if that grab would have been made, it would have been 19 because he put that money on the ball, or that ball on the money that time.
There could have been a couple more in there. So, yeah. All right, let's hear what Josh Heupel had to say on this. Is just his opening statements because I really didn't go. Kind of went out of order here than I normally do. So here's basically he didn't really have an opening statement. It started with a couple of questions, but these are the answers to the first couple of questions that kind of went together.
Yeah, I've never been a part of a first drive like we had right there. Guys being dialed into to what we're doing, and it was out on the perimeter, it was in the core. I told the guys in the locker room, enjoy this. They got 85 scholarships, got a good coaching staff over there too. Wins are hard to come by. A lot of great things during the course of this ball game. You look at the yards offensively that we had, points we put up. You look at the ability of our defense to physically dominate the middle part of the football game, the turnovers that they caused. Enjoy that. We'll get back on Monday and correct those things and get better at it. Obviously, that's something that's got to get corrected for us moving forward. During the course of the game, you try to correct it. You do it in the right manner where your kids have a chance to hopefully respond to it the right way and go do some positive things. And we did that in all three phases of the game. There are things that we have to correct. That's going to be the case with every game. Some of the things that we have to correct in this one are obvious to everybody that was watching the football game. Believe that we'll do those things. At the same time, you work really hard for very few opportunities. This year, fewer than any other year. Just went out there and scored a bunch of points and played a physically dominating football game on the defensive side of the ball. Our special teams were really solid all day long. Enjoy it, man. That's why you come back on Monday and we'll learn and we'll get better.
Okay, so he was obviously making light of the not making light, but just didn't really want to talk the entire press conference about the penalties, obviously. And you know, I completely understand that.
Well,
I mean,
you don't want the penalties to outshine all the good
exactly,
that you did.
And that's what he's saying, yeah. So, all right, here's what he had to say on a couple of the guys that really stepped up. We'll start here first with Jay Flash. He had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Explosive, getting more comfortable in what we're doing every single week. All of our guys have the ability to move inside and outside. That's a little bit different than what we've been here our first couple of years. I think part of that's our kids' understanding of what we're doing conceptually and how we can move people around. I thought Jalen did a better job this week of all the things that happened before the snap of the whistle to handle our tempo in a better way.
All right, Jay Flash is Jalen Robinson, by the way. Here's what Josh Heupel had to say on Dylan Gabriel. He was only asked one question about him, and he didn't really say much, but this is it.
I think he was pretty accurate today. He was really decisive. There were some rolled coverages from them that are different looks than maybe you see on a daily basis that he handled really well. He got to the right spot a lot today and had a really positive day.
All right, well, another new face that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, Johnny Richardson, had a heck of a run, and here's what Josh Heupel had to say on him.
Seen a lot of runs just like the one he had today when he got his opportunity. He's a dynamic playmaker. I love his energy. I think our entire football team understands it. He comes out to practice the same guy every single day, has as much energy as anybody, loves competing and loves playing ball.
I cannot personally wait to see a lot more of this kid. Just like Heupel said, the energy that this guy brings. And I think he's lightning in a bottle. I mean, he just is fast and shifty, and, he's going to be very exciting. I saw a lot of people say afterwards, especially after this game, that he reminds people of Adrian Killens a little bit, the way that he runs. I think he personally runs a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't see that. What I see is the speed comparison, so I see that. But Adrian was more of a one cut and run kind of running back. And what you see with Richardson is he's cutting it to the outside. He's looking at angles. He's taking the right angles to get past guys. And, his big run for the touchdown, he was going out to the sideline. So for me, that's a whole different skill set. And, he's maybe a half step behind AK in how fast he can be. So he's bulkier. He weighs more. One of the big challenges with AK was, once you hit him once, he pretty much is going to go down. And this guy's a lot more muscular. He's compact. I think he's actually a little bit shorter than what AK was.
Yeah.
But
and I think that's
bulkier.
where, some of the comparison may be his size a little bit. But yes, he is a little bit bulkier and definitely does run a little bit different. So, yeah, but still excited to see him. Here's what Josh Heupel had to say on Marlon Williams. Of course, Marlon has had incredible games, 136 yards this week as well.
I thought Marlon did a lot of really good things when the ball came to him. I thought he played pretty strong to the catch. A couple of competitive plays that he's close to making down in the red zone as well. I thought he played really well without the ball in his hands today, too, and I think that speaks to his maturity.
All right, and then finally from Josh Heupel, finally, again, a home game, which is something we have not had this year.
Definitely be excited to be at home and play in front of some fans that wear black and gold, man. I don't know how many that's going to be for sure, but we're looking forward to trying to go 1-0 next week at home, put on a show for our fans. And I think our kids have handled all the adversity that they've faced and all the uncertainty in a really positive way. You know, starting the season out 2 weeks in a row on the road. Been unique to our program. Our kids handled it really well.
And everybody that was interviewed throughout the press conference was quite excited about, playing at home and echoed the same statements as well. Here's what Eric Gilliard had to say on the game.
I felt like towards the end, we kind of let up a little. Some plays was made on us that we could have prevented from happening. And overall, the start, I feel like on defense, we kind of started off a little slow, but towards the middle of the game, I feel like we picked it up and played pretty well. Just some things we got to clean up next week. Turnovers are always something that we stress for emphasis on defense. And I think today we did a great job going out there, making things happen, jumping on the opportunities when we see the ball on the ground, and just making great plays on the ball.
All right, and this final clip is Richie Grant and his thoughts from the game.
It wasn't too much of us being particular with any one thing. I think we just played hard today. Obviously, it wasn't our best game. We still feel like we left a lot of players out there. But in terms of the turnovers and the new QB, we just played hard today, and we got after him a little bit. We know how we play. We know what kind of defense we are. Just speaking from the defensive side, we left too many players out there. We know that. We're a senior group. We celebrate it, but it's kind of hard when like, we way better than this. We can play better than this. So we're going to get a lot of things corrected this next week moving forward.
All right. Well, they're a little upset. It's interesting as a player, even though it looks, pretty good from the sideline, from the TV, from your living room, they can still be pretty upset with even a game with 4 turnovers. And really, they played a pretty good game. I mean, obviously won the game handily.
Well, especially the defensive backs, right? So, I mean, something we've got to remember is a lot of the guys, I know Richie said this is a pretty senior group, but realistically the DBs, we're playing 2 freshmen out there, and we're leaving them out there on man coverage. Now, the first half of the game, and specifically the first quarter, I don't know if this is a coaching thing or if these guys were playing too far off the ball, but in our zone coverages, we were playing way off on the zone coverage. And we were letting up and leaving a lot of things open underneath. So for me, that was the one thing that I saw them adjust. Our guys and our defensive backs started playing a lot closer to their receivers, and I think once that happened, they really had a good handle on them and really locked them down. I mean, I was expecting way more from C.J. Johnson. He had a 100-yard game, but most of it was towards the end when we had our 2s and 3s rolling through. So if our ones who are freshmen are being coached up the way they are and are playing as well as they are, and we feel comfortable enough to allow Corey Thornton out there as a freshman, and Dawson out there as a freshman to be able to provide man coverage to allow our guys to really rush the quarterback, I think we're in pretty good shape as far as the defense is concerned.
Yeah, I don't know who you were talking about there, but C.J. Johnson only had 2 catches for 52 yards, by the way. The only person that had over 100 yards besides, the quarterback throwing, he had 215. The only person that had 100 yards in anything was their punter. He punted for 131 yards.
Well, more power to him.
Their receivers were 56, 52, 19, and 18, and their running backs were 66, 76, 45, and 43. So
yeah, I don't have my targets in front of me for them, but their average was 18.7, 26, and 31, which tells me I know they threw the ball a lot more than that, which tells me that we had some blanket coverage going on there, and the guys really played them well.
Yeah. So statistically, this was pretty good. Their total offense had 83 plays, 459 yards. We had 87 plays, 632 yards. So I think statistically we won that one pretty good with the 4 turnovers especially. All right, so do you want to go ahead and look at this a little closer by the numbers?
Yeah, I think that's a great segue. Thank you, Andrew. So, especially since I flubbed C.J. Johnson's numbers, I must have been thinking about last year's numbers when I was speaking. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this game's numbers. So one thing that I've enjoyed tracking, and I think I'm going to continue to do, is kind of look at our 4 years and our last 40 wins. I'm going to add to that. So we talked about it a little bit last week. This week, we're up to 41 games that I'm looking at. We have 37 wins, 40 games with 30-plus points. I mean, think about that. 40 out of 41 games, we've scored more than 30 points. That's going to equate to a lot of winning. Yeah. 26 500-yard-plus games. So over half of the ones that we're looking at have 500-plus yards of offense, which in the George O'Leary years, oh, my God, that would never happen.
Yeah.
So
it's like one.
Yeah, so we didn't get to update a P5 win this week. Unfortunately, that was Georgia Tech. And we have 4 top 25 finishes, and as we look at the polls a little bit later, we're trending up on that number as well. So super excited about that. For this game, we had 632 yards of total offense. I can't believe I'm saying that 2 weeks in a row, versus 459. Now, a lot of that was garbage time. We kind of mentioned that earlier. Our third down percentage wasn't quite as healthy as it was in the last game, but it's still above 50% and much better than the previous year, which was at 46%. So as long as we keep that moving in the right direction, we'll be good to go. 3 of those, remember, were from turnovers that we only got 3 points off of. So that was a little disappointing, and that certainly factored into those numbers. We got 4 total turnovers. We've got 9 for the year, 3 fumbles and 1 interception. But again, only 3 points off of those fumbles. And we had a little bit more of those red zone issues pop up this week. But what you started to see was Heupel was using the middle of the field and a little bit more on those, and we scored touchdowns.
All right, good.
Next, we've got our second consecutive 200-yard-plus rushing game and 400-plus passing game, which is phenomenal. That was after they were using a bunch of overload blitzes on many downs. So again, remember, you could see what they were trying to do. They were trying to take away our run game, because normally we use our run game to set up our passing game, and they were trying to force us into passing first, which we successfully adjusted on that as well. So, the offensive numbers themselves were pretty close. We were rushing at 5.6 yards per carry, which is an extremely healthy number when you look across the entire running back group, versus 4.5 for them. We actually had less rush yards, but our passing numbers blew them out of the water. We had 6 more attempts than they did, and we had 408 yards versus 215 for them. So, again, that's looking back at us not rushing as much to begin with. We took the top off of it, which caused them in the second half to go to 3 down linemen as opposed to rushing 7 at a time. Time of possession was another interesting number. We did have less time of possession. Remember last week, Andrew, you astutely brought up that for the first time in forever, we had higher time of possession than they did. In this case, it was 26 minutes and 52 seconds versus 33:08. No turnovers this week for us. Dylan had one last week, so that was great. We scored on 52% of our possessions. That was much better than last year as well. So if you tell me, hey, we're getting those turnovers and we're scoring on 52% of those, I'm a pretty happy camper. I would have loved to see 2 or 3 more scores in there. I think we left some on the table. And then, when we're talking about the 40s, inside the 40, we had 67% of our drives were inside the 40. So inside ECU's 40, which if you have that, then that means you're going to be scoring. I adjusted it. If you take that one closing drive that we had out, it bumps up to 71%. So if we can do that and score when we get inside the 40, we're going to be doing great. So 10 out of 15. For them, they had 6 out of 15. So there's another big defensive statistic. So they only made it past our 40-yard line 6 times, which is phenomenal considering that they had 15 different opportunities to get there. Points inside the 40, we had 44 Last week we had 42, if you recall, versus 15 drives. So that's we had clearly less opportunities last week, but we did more with them. Opportunities inside the 40, 10 versus 6. We had 15 drives. Turnovers and tough defense are the difference here, really, if you look at it, because when we allowed them to have the ball, we were turning it over 4 out of those drives, so they didn't even have a chance to get there. We had 14, and remember, they had 14 points that were in garbage time. So realistically speaking, they scored 14 points on us, 14 of those again in garbage time, so I'm happy with that. Lots of punts and turnovers, and we're averaging 2 minutes and 14 seconds per scoring drive, which is extremely quick. And again, that leads to more possessions when you're scoring on half of them. That means you're going to be putting up 50 burgers pretty quickly. Penalties, again, we do have to mention those. 19 for 139 yards. Of those 19, I believe it was 8 that were false start penalties, and a lot of those were in the first quarter. For ECU, 11 for 105. And again, that goes back to what we've been hearing from parents and from Dylan, obviously, a little earlier, that ECU's defensive line was, calling the cadence. So let's talk about Dylan a little bit. He had 68% completion rate, a 68% completion rate versus 66 for last week, 32 of 57 for 408 yards and 4 TDs. Now, this game, we wore out the bubble screens a little bit, so his average pass was a little bit shorter. So, in other words, the average yards per pass that he completed was a little bit less than they were last week. But we were looking to stretch the field and getting their defense out of the box because they were just overload blitzing on everything. His QBR was also a little bit lower this week, 73.1. But he is on the Manning watch list again for this week and was Athlon Sports Offensive Player of the Week. Over 2 games, we've now gained 825 yards. Now, remember, that's after a bunch of penalties. So those penalties we were talking about, we left 139 on the table.
This is his stats, 825.
Correct. 8 TDs and 1 interception after 2 games. I mean, almost 1,000 yards.
Pretty good ratio there. 8 touchdowns for 1 interception.
Yep, and this week he did go over. He did join the top 10 list in career passing for UCF. Now think about that. He didn't
sophomore into his second game.
Second game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just phenomenal. And he also is in the running for the PFF National Player of the Week. So that breakdown on the penalties again, kind of talking about that 8 false start penalties. So I was correct on that. And when you look at it collectively, Jalen had about 150 yards. So essentially, that's taking Jalen off and his production off the field just on penalties. So we definitely have some opportunities there. Also didn't like that drop had a unsportsmanlike penalty. To me, that's ridiculous. We had them stopped. That was a turnover on downs, and then we gave it right back to them. And just a reminder for those that are keeping count of the people that we were missing off of our roster this week, we had 8 opt-outs. Again, that's Lamarius Benson, and Adrian Medley that came back. So they are back with us, but that still leaves 8. And then Trey Nixon was out. Otis Anderson had a little bit of an injury while he was playing, so he went out. You didn't see him as much, especially on punt returns. And
not
things
sure
like that.
what that is, but his mom posted on Twitter that he's fine and he's all good. So
yeah, I expect him back next week. And what that does though is it gives our other guys an opportunity to get some game time in, and clearly they did a lot with it. Trillian Coles is still out, and Parker Boudreaux was also out this week with the concussion.
Yeah, I was worried that Dylan Gabriel was going to be out with the concussion after trying to make that stop that he made, and it was a dead play anyway.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because that really frustrated the holy heck out of me. Those whistles were not, and you saw this last week too, plays were dead, and you did not hear the whistles being blown.
Yeah, it's hard to hear those whistles, I think, on the field. They're the electronic whistles, and I don't think they're as loud. They need to do something about that.
Yeah, because he was trying to make that tackle, and he took a knee to the head, and he was clearly shaken up by that.
Maybe make those things come through the PA speakers somehow. Put a microphone or something on them and make them a little bit louder because they're hard to hear.
Well,
so.
Someone's going to end up getting hurt on a play that they shouldn't.
It's true. Absolutely.
So game stats, if we want to talk about that a little bit again, 632 versus 459. Pass yards, 408 versus 215. Rush yards, 224 versus 244. And again, they were stacking the box early, which kind of limited it. We talked about penalties. We had 29 first downs, 30 last week. So we had less opportunities, but we had more first downs this week. They had 25, so they actually moved the ball a little bit too, but we got those turnovers, which stopped those short. Third downs, 8 for 16 versus 9 for 18, so they were 50-50 again. So, again, a little bit better last week, but, still good enough for us to win. Fourth downs, we only went for it twice this week versus last week. It seemed like we were doing it on every play. 0 for 2 versus 1 for 2 for them. Total plays, 87 versus 83, and the clear difference there is the execution of our plays versus what they were doing. And then that shows in the yards per play. So we had 7.26, which is better than last week, and versus 5.5 for them. So we actually played a little bit better defensively as well. Yards per completion, 8.7, so that was down a little bit. Again, we were using more shorter passes to break up that box because they were coming at us with everything, so we were trying to stretch the field versus 7.4 for them. Yards per carry, 5.6 versus 4.8 for last week. So we actually got a little bit better on that, and they had 4.5, which was also better for us. Red zone, a little bit of a difference, 6 and 7, 6 out of 7 in the red zone versus 2 and 4 for them. Time of possession, we talked about a little bit earlier. Turnovers, 0 for us, 4 for them. Fumbles lost, 0. We had 3 fumbles that we recovered. So I don't know if you watched that, but you can tell that they're focusing on it because our guys, as soon as that ball pops up there, they're out there fighting for it.
Yeah.
I don't know what Holt Nailers was doing at the bottom of that pile, but he just kept laying there when he coughed.
There's all kinds of crazy things that go on at the bottom of that pile, by the way. We can't mention most of them on here, I don't think.
Yeah. Sacks, obviously, we had 0 versus ECU, which had 2. And tackles for a loss, we had 8, which is phenomenal, which is better. So we're keeping on that trend. Remember, last year, we were the tackles for a loss leader for the entire country. But our turnovers were worse. So now we're getting the turnovers back and the tackles for a loss. That's a byproduct of the defense that we're playing, and obviously there's a focus on that, and that's going to turn into more possessions for us.
So we shouldn't get rid of Randy Shannon?
No.
There was somebody that did a super hot take on one of the boards.
Yeah, I think that was even more flaming hot than my hot takes.
Well, speaking of flaming hot takes, let's do your 5-alarm hot take of the week.
Wow, we're getting good at these transitions. All right, so...
You don't have to point every one of them out.
Oh, come on. UCF is the best team in Florida, so that's my hot take. You heard Dylan Gabriel say it last week. The Gators actually played a game this week. They won convincingly versus, who were they playing? Ole Miss, or I think Mississippi State won, so it was Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Which, to me, honestly, it's Ole Miss. They aren't that great. I don't know why this is such a big deal. I mean, honestly, they scored 35 points, and Gators have been known for defense recently. It really didn't impress me all that much.
Because the lane train is in Mississippi, or at Ole Miss, and so they're supposed to be world burners. Jeff Lebby and the lane train are there, so...
Yeah, well, Jeff Lebby, who tries to steal all of our recruits now that he's moved on.
Exactly.
For us, the other thing is we only have been playing 2 to 3 quarters. I mean, if you watch us this game, we were talking about it a little bit earlier. We turned the tap off early fourth quarter. We were just running the ball to try to run out the clock. And Hype will love him or hate him. He does not have that killer mentality. So I don't know how I feel about that. I think he gets irritated sometimes, but I really want to, I have 2 sides of that argument.
Yeah.
One is I don't want to get anybody hurt because you saw what happened last year with that, right? Yep. So, but at the same time, we're playing for style points now because I don't think we're playing for the AAC championship. We're playing for the college football championship.
Yeah, I think his style points are in the middle of the game versus really throwing it on at the end, which is fine. I mean, it's the safe way to play it.
Yeah, it is.
And I completely understand that. Of course, I would love to see 70 points at some time, and I think that we will at some point this season. I think we'll see a little bit more. But I'm good with the way that he kind of turns off the faucet towards the end.
Well, and ESPN, I think, agrees with us. They made a big deal out of this last week. They took Dylan's comments, and Andrea Adelson, who's actually a local ESPN personality, she put this out there where she said, if we were playing on a neutral field, UCF would beat Florida by 1.3 points.
Favored.
Yeah, would be favored by 1.3 points, 12.8 points over Miami, 14.2 points over FSU, and I think that number is going to go up after this week.
I think that would probably go up, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's exciting stuff, and I think Miami, I think that's about the right number for them even after this week. I'm not as impressed. De'Aaron King, remember, guys, the difference for them this year is they have a competent quarterback, and if you recall, that was Houston's former quarterback. So they had to steal an AAC quarterback to be competitive in the ACC. So,
it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So, personally, I don't think anybody can run with this offense, and we haven't even hit our stride fully.
I agree with that part. I agree with most of that, actually. So I don't know if it's that hot of a hot take. But it's good.
Well, apparently the rest of the nation does.
Yeah,
so
you're doing good with that. All right, well, let's take a little bit of a break, and we'll come back and talk to Kyle Israel.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
Raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney is our commitment to you at Chad Barr Law. I'm Chad Barr, and as a UCF alum, I am proud to present Knightline at Night, Central Florida's only call-in show dedicated to our UCF Knights, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. And remember, if you or a loved one are injured in an auto accident, call us at 407-599-9036 to schedule your free consultation, or visit us at chadbarlaw.com. Offices Altamont Springs. Go Knights, charge on.
Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando. All right, please welcome back to the Knightline show, Kyle Israel. Kyle, good to talk to you again. What a game this week. Kind of a little bit of an interesting week, but I'm going to start off with Dylan Gabriel. 32 of 47 for 408 yards, 4 touchdowns again.
He was phenomenal. Really, really good. And I think, I think when you look back, to McKenzie and the success that we had, at times I would kind of remind us, like, don't take these things for granted, right? Like, don't overlook or take for granted the performances that we're seeing, not only by McKenzie, but by our team. And I would reiterate that with Dylan. I mean, it's to see a guy, obviously at UCF, nobody's gone out and thrown for 400-yard games, 2 weeks in a row. But listen, when you watch Dylan, he makes it look so easy. It's just scary how easy it looks. And I can tell you that it is not that easy. The way that he makes it look is from, somebody from my perspective saying, man, this is a really challenging thing to do, what he's doing. And he's doing it really flawlessly a majority of the time. And I'm just extremely impressed. I think that it's, there's an element of having McKenzie in his ear on the sideline that, has really helped Dylan along the way. But, we have an incredible quarterback, one of the best in the country. And I just enjoy watching him play the game because it's so effortless. And he just throws the ball from different types of angles. He can do it on the run. He can do it throwing it over the top. it's just so much fun to watch.
Also, I should have mentioned a school record of 18 completed passes in a row, which is pretty amazing. And when he was asked about that in the press conference, he had no idea that he did it, and he said he doesn't really care.
Well, I mean, that's what you want. I can remember a game that I think I went 19-21. Yes, UCF fans, there actually was a game where I had a completion percentage like that, but I didn't know it until after the game either. Everybody said, "Man, you were two incompletions away from having a perfect day," and I was like, I didn't really have any clue where I was at all. But when you reel off 18 completions in a row, obviously there's an element of blocking for that success to happen. There's guys that have to catch the ball on the other end, and when your quarterback does that, things are really firing on all cylinders offensively for that to even be possible.
Hey, going back to thinking about KZ versus DG, and I know we don't want to look at the two of them and Wow, I can't speak. Contrast and compare the two of them. But at the end of the day, how much do you think Dylan's performance is being lifted up by the fact that the system has been in place for a couple of years, whereas KZ, everything was new?
Good question. Real good question. I think for KZ, really he had to take some serious lumps, right? That first year tends to be an afterthought in our program's history when Frost was there for the first year. And I think people forget that Mackenzie was very, very, very close to leaving UCF, very close. And I don't know that we would ever have Dylan Gabriel at UCF if Mackenzie did leave after that season. But I really think at the same time, it's two very different offenses. It really is. When you watch Scott Frost's offense compared to Josh Heupel's offense, some of the tempo and some of the leveraging of speed, there are similarities there, but the overall schematics of it were totally different. And so I'll give Dylan credit because, I think that KZ kind of really cleared this path for Dylan to be successful, but Dylan's really done it in an offense that is very different than what Mackenzie did it in. And I think that he's done it in his own way. And he doesn't really have the athleticism, in my opinion, that Mackenzie does, kind of that point guard-esque style. But he's just able to be so freaking accurate that it just makes us that much better. And I think that, Mackenzie paved the way some, but what Dylan's doing, he's doing very much in his own way. And I think we should definitely separate even the stylistic elements to them as well.
Would you say that Heupel's offense is very simple compared to Scott Frost's offense? I mean, to the naked eye and just to, the normal person, you would think that it's a lot more simple.
It's much simpler.
Yeah.
I mean, as a matter of fact, to our detriment, right? Like
it's almost
it's like, okay,
it's repetitive.
I'm starting to feel like when I'm watching our offense, and I don't mean this as a negative thing, this is just
it obviously works.
It works, but we're leveraging the tempo more than anything else. Like our tempo is what is wearing teams down. Our tempo is what's creating opportunities for success. I'm waiting for somebody to really punch us in the mouth where our tempo has to slow some, and then to see what type of creativity Josh Heupel comes out with, because I think we can be even better offensively than what we currently are. We're really saying we're going to get up to the line of scrimmage, we're going to snap the ball in 6 to 8 seconds, and we're just going to wear you down. There's no misdirections. There's barely any motions. Wide receivers line up on the same side of the ball all game long, and we run the ball right up the middle, right up the middle, right up the middle, and sometimes it squirts outside. There's not a lot of different plays. There's not a lot of what I would call creativity offensively. And, at some point, it's going to be hard for us to hit balls down the field like we have been. And there's going to be games, I think, like we saw in the third quarter last week, where some things don't click, and all of a sudden we're off the field, defense is on the field, and it can put us in some tough positions. So I think these offenses are very different. I think that Coach Frost's offense was a much different scheme, and I think that what we're seeing right now is very plain and saying we're going to beat you with athleticism and we're going to beat you with our tempo, but there's not a whole lot of creativity in there.
I agree with that. I mean, where you really see that is if you're looking at our red zone offense, right? So our spread is predicated on having enough room to be able to spread the defenders out. And once you get into that red zone, then you have to do it with scheme because the whole field is compressed. So, we saw them go over the middle a little bit more in the red zone. What would you do? I mean, if I'm a defender, I'm playing quarters. What would you do against that type of defense and with that compressed space with that scheme?
Well, I would really. I'd try to get some guys coming across the field in motion. I'd try to get some handoffs in the backfield to, maybe Marlon Williams where he can, stretch the edge and then cut it up inside if he wants to. And I do a little bit of what we saw the other day, which is starting to find some of Jacob Harris or some of our tight ends over the middle. It became obvious, like we talked about last week, right, that, the middle of the field against some of these defenses was an area that we needed to attack, and we did. And so I would continue to do that. I think that honestly, the running game is so vanilla that I don't even know what else we're capable of doing. So I can't even tell you what schemes would work. It's literally looks like the same thing every time nearly. But I would definitely leverage our height. I would definitely leverage, our speed. And I think that they're trying to do that. And there were cases where they did, but I mean, Dylan just really covers a lot of those things up. He's so accurate with the football. Even the touchdown he threw yesterday, moving to his left and throwing it to the back of the end zone was just on the money. When you see that kind of sky cam angle, you're like, man, he literally just puts it right where it needs to be. So I would leverage the height and the speed and keep it attacking the middle of the field. But I couldn't even tell you what adjustments could be made from the run game perspective because all of our runs look the same to me.
All right, so I want to ask you about what you think of all these offside penalties yesterday. It was a little weird, and supposedly from what the players are saying is that the defensive line for ECU was basically barking at them and saying, like, go and ready and, like, and hut and all this stuff. Talking a bunch of crap across the line and making them jump off. And I know that stuff takes place, but I don't think that that's completely legal, number one. Number two, you have to prepare for something like that. It just doesn't seem like they were prepared for that. But it does seem like in the long run they adapted to it, and it was good for the most part of the second half, I guess. Or they stopped doing it.
Yeah, at the beginning of the game, it was just disgusting. That was the only way I could explain what I saw for those first couple of plays. It was like, what is this garbage? Like, literally. And if anybody didn't feel the same way, then you weren't watching the same thing I was. My first intuition was that they were hearing some type of false call, right? Because that just doesn't happen ever, like 4 in a row like that. The odd thing is,
and I do know, real quick, yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do know that we push the boundaries of what is onsides and offsides sometimes as well with our tempo.
Very much. I mean, sometimes I'm wondering how these guys are even getting lined up and set for a second, right? You're supposed to be set for a second. So,
and I wondered if maybe it was the referee like really paying attention to that more than anything else that was happening on the field. Like this guy was aware of it, and that we pushed that boundary a lot. So he was keying in on it. I mean, I wonder if it was a little bit of that, but I went back and I rewatched, and they were blatant. I mean, you could just see the guys jumping.
Yeah, I had thought that because there's no crowd, if there were players on ECU's line, and I can remember where I would get up under center, and there were definitely, D linemen that were trying to make some level of noise, but there's no crowd, right? So you would imagine that the referee or the umpire would pick up on those things and at least throw a flag on ECU if that's in fact
you could hear it on TV as well.
Could you hear them saying stuff?
I heard barking of some kind at some point during the game, yes. If you turned up the sound, good, where you could, hear everything. you could hear something coming from the field, yes.
It's hard to tell. Usually if players are coming out and saying something of that nature, like they're not looking to make an excuse for themselves. So if players are being vocal about it, I would imagine that there was something going on. And again, it's so odd, right, to like see that many in a row, and even that many in the course of a game. But I still think penalties are something that, can bite us in the rear end, when we go and face a Cincinnati later in the season or some of these other teams. Like, we have got to clean up the penalties. And it's something that's starting to be very, very commonplace. And as we continue to move forward, you'd hope that stuff would clean itself up, or the coaches would clean it up.
Well, to your point, it was worth 140 yards, 139 to be exact on this last game. And I'm just curious. I mean, why didn't they go to a silent count more quickly than what they did? Because that would eliminate a lot of that, is if they just went to a silent count as opposed to doing, an audible one.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the way that we use the cadence to give any clear perspective on that. What I can say is the silent count really takes everything else out of the equation. Silent count is great when it's super duper loud. Silent count is great when you're just trying to move fast. Silent count is great when you're in a scenario where you keep jumping off sides. So I need to know more about the cadence and how we leverage the cadence, especially Dylan, and how that audibly sounds coming out of his mouth. But we made adjustments clearly throughout the game because we got better, and it's so funny that we're even, talking about some of these negative things when we scored 51 points and blew somebody out.
Exactly.
Well, Heupel certainly made adjustments because he was on that sideline barking. I mean, they were showing him, he was upset.
Yeah, he was mad.
Yeah.
Talk about these receivers a little bit. I mean, 2 receivers over 120 yards. One had 150 yards. The other had 136 yards. Marlon Williams, 13 catches for 136. Jalen Robinson, who really has come on, 9 catches for 150. 2 touchdowns.
Good luck finding a way to cover those guys. Our offensive group as a whole, there's so much diversity in it, right? Like, Jalen is a smaller statue but has lightning speed and clearly is a confident wide receiver and still very young. Marlon has got some more size, still has speed, very strong, almost looks like a running back out there with great hands. Jacob Harris is, 6'5", 6'6", brings a whole different element to the game. I think O'Keefe was one of the fastest track stars in the state. He's got the type of speed that you like to see here. We have a very, very talented group of wide receivers. I think we have we've started creating, for so long we'd like to say like wide receiver U, and we've had Brandon Marshall and Mike Walker and Perryman and Kamar Aiken, and there's a lot of guys that I'm leaving out, J.J. Wharton and Speedy Rennell Hall and all those guys. Like, we've had receivers at UCF, and I think this is continuing to be this like peak of the crescendo of the guys that we've had. We're very dynamic. I don't know that anybody else across the country has a wide receiver core as talented as we do, or at least it gets the opportunity to make plays like our offense allows them to make plays. And you just got to give a ton of credit to them.
Yeah, and then, speaking to that a little bit more, I think that goes back to Heupel's offensive philosophy with wanting to see one-on-one matchups, right? So do you think that's why the execution of the very similar plays and Dylan's reads are so important? And is that what's behind the offense versus the complexity of like Frost's offense?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Dylan is able to be pinpoint accurate, and it's not like, Jalen Robinson was obviously running wide open on one of those touchdowns yesterday. And I think the scheme created that scenario. But there are times when our receivers are pretty well covered, guys over their back, and Dylan is just literally putting the ball on the money constantly, and even some drops. I think Dylan should have probably had 5 touchdowns, maybe 6 touchdowns in that game. But there are a few drops where ECU's players got their hands in there and made some really good plays from a defensive perspective. But this offense is really designed, like you said, to create the one-on-one matchup, whether it's a fade down the field or a slant route or an in-cutting route. I'm still waiting to see when our offense will, have digs, or you look at these teams that have a slot receiver that kind of works his way across the field and ends up on the other hash, and you're kind of hitting them in stride. You see that with the Kansas City Chiefs a lot. You see that with some of these other up-tempo offenses. Like, I don't know that we've needed to be that complex yet.
That's what I was going to say, is like we haven't needed to.
Yeah, we just haven't needed to do it. I'm just wondering if we have it, if it is in the playbook, or if this is just how it is. Like, we're going to be a team that creates matchups that we want, and we're going to get the ball down the field. There's going to be a team, and it may not be this season, right? With the, we don't have maybe in a conference championship, it could be Cincinnati, but somebody's going to line up out there with some DBs that are as talented as our wide receivers. And just throwing it deep every time or trying to hit the one-on-one matchup every time is simply not going to work. And you're going to get into 3rd and long, and you're going to have to be creative. So I don't want to see us put in those scenarios, but I am interested to see what happens when we play a stout defensive backfield that is not just going to let us run over the top of them all game long.
Yeah, I think it's there. I just don't think it's been needed to be used. And I've said this all along with Heupel's offense. We've seen him in other places, Missouri, run a completely different thing, but here it just seems like he hasn't had to for the most part. I mean, there has been some times where it was probably needed, but it just hasn't happened. So
I'll give him credit. He's doing a very good job of sticking to what's working, and he's running with it. And I'm not going to knock a coaching staff for doing that. It's just, I wonder if we could actually be that much better if we continue to. We have the tempo down. It's unbelievable, in my opinion, and some people that I've talked to recently. It is unbelievable that we can get up and get a snap off in 6 to 8 seconds. I mean, truly amazing. And I think that if we kind of sometimes slow that down a little bit and add other elements into the offense, some motions, wide receivers lining up in different positions, number one, you create scenarios where defenses the next week have to prepare for these different formations, prepare for these motions, prepare for these different looks. But number two, we still have all this athletic ability to create some different play calls. So I'm not griping or anything along those lines. I just think we can continue to get that much better, because what we're seeing right now is very vanilla to the naked eye, at least.
Absolutely. All right, so on to the rushing the ground game. 40 rushes for 224 yards. 4 running backs were seen, maybe even 5. I think there was one guy that wasn't listed in the stats for some reason, but no running back over 100 yards. Greg McCrae close at 83 yards. Bentavious Thompson 78. Johnny Richardson 41. Who that guy is lightning in a bottle, by the way. He's going to be very exciting to see, I think, in the future. And then Otis Anderson, who was injured in some way during the game, and 7 carries for 25 yards. So not as prolific as we have been on the ground before, but still it didn't look, really exciting watching the game. But then you look at the stats, 224 yards.
It's deceiving, right? It's because our brain can't process what we're seeing. We're seeing a play. If a play is like 6 seconds, well, every 14 or 15 seconds, there's another play. Like, as humans, I'm not sure we're processing exactly what we're seeing. We're not watching football like we're accustomed to watching football. And so you tend to forget, that was a 6-yard gain. That was a 4-yard gain. That was an 8-yard gain. And you don't processing it. And then you look at the stats, it's like 220 yards later.
Well, I've noticed the announcers, and they'll admit that they can't keep up.
How do you keep up with that?
Yeah, you can't.
It's truly remarkable that we have 11 guys and a coaching staff working in unison to move that way. It is. But I think the running game is, with this backfield that we have, is strong. You have guys, I said that the running game seems very vanilla, but we have offensive linemen getting to the second level. We have running backs that are able to break it outside. I think that we just have one of the best stables of running backs in the country. I mean, we probably have one of the best wide receiver units in the country. You could argue that we probably have one of the best running back units in the country, top to bottom. And when your running back unit goes out and puts up 221 yards and, with nothing that really, makes you in awe about a specific run or a couple different runs, like we're just a machine right now offensively. And it's really fun to watch. And, I'm hoping that the thing that Coach Heupel is doing a good job of is a lot of guys are getting touches, and that bodes well to recruiting. Hey, man, come in next year, you're going to get some touches in this offense. And I think that starts to become this, cycle, this feedback loop where people realize, okay, if I go to UCF, we're going to go and have 600 yards a game. Even if I'm the third string running back, I may get 8 to 10 carries in a game. And so I think that feedback loop of that mindset when it comes to recruiting, this is a perfect example of that type of scenario.
Yeah, you're talking 5.6 yards per carry across the entire group. So 5.6 yards is nothing to sneeze at when you're talking about. The other thing, that I think why it doesn't hit home as much is because at the beginning of the game, they were loading up the box. I mean, they were throwing everybody in the kitchen sink at us and Dylan. So we just started taking off the top. And then I did see a few wrinkles in there. We saw some direct snaps to Greg McCrae. So
good point.
Yeah. What else did you see out there from the running game that caused it to work, and especially with the diversity in backs that we had?
Well, I think that our offensive line is doing a really good job of getting up to linebackers, and our backs are so quick. Like, even when you watch Bentavious run, his patience, like, he can be up to the line of scrimmage pretty quickly, and then he's taking a half second, to really set up his blocks. And that's very obvious to me. I should give Coach credit and go back on, like, saying there's no diversity in the running game because of those direct snaps and some of the wrinkles that we threw into the running game. As well. But I think that our guys are very diverse, and each guy has a little bit of a different skill set. But, you got to give credit to the offensive line. If you're a running back, you got to give credit to the coaching staff because we're simply just wearing people down as we move down the field. And everybody brings this little different element to the table from back 1 to back 4. As long as we're healthy, we're just going to be very difficult to stop because of that depth, the versatility. And, we haven't even seen a scenario where we're using Otis out in screens like we have in the past. Like, I think we're still seeing this very vanilla version of who we are. And it'll continue to be more creative as time goes on. Not to mention, we didn't have spring practice. We didn't have a whole lot of time to get things installed. We did have some stuff over video, but, we weren't on the field as much as we would have been without COVID. So I think that as the season goes on, we'll see more of those guys. But right now, 5.6 yards a clip, hard to beat that. I mean, you can beat most anybody in the country if you can run at 5.6 yards a clip.
Yeah, I think that simplicity, again, is a little bit of Coach Heupel holding things close to the chest as well, and wanting it just to look, here you've got tape, but it's simple, because that he doesn't like to give anything away. As far as what he's doing or what he's planning on. I want to move on to the offensive line and the way that they played. Dylan Gabriel was not credited with any rushing yards at all, and he was not sacked one single time during this. I mean, we can also talk about, we already talked about, I guess, the penalties that the offensive line all had. But still pretty impressive with all that pressure that they were bringing, that Dylan Gabriel did not get sacked even once.
Yeah, and it was a great combo of working in unison with Dylan. I think that there was a couple times during the game where obviously ECU's plan was to pressure us, at least early on, and the line was picking those guys up. They were creating a really clean pocket for Dylan most of the game. And then the other side of it is Dylan was hitting hot routes. And so you see Jacob Harris coming from the slot and kind of catching some of those slants. So you see the tight ends coming across and running those slants right behind the blitzing linebackers. It was a really, really cool combo to watch because, I'm looking at it and say, okay, you're going to have to be hot here. They're blitz of 7 guys. Like, we can't pick everybody up. And it's like second nature to Dylan. He's going to that hot route. The guy that's running that route is either, designed or breaking it off to run that. And then the offensive line is picking up the 5 guys that they need to pick up. So I'll give them a lot of credit. Again, they're getting to the second level. I think you got to remember that those are big guys too, and that tempo can wear them down. And sometimes you see some sloppiness, truly just because they're getting tired like other guys on the field. But right now, I think our offense has been playing great. Offensive line, has been playing great.
Yeah, and when you look at that, I think part of that, to your point, was not just what the offensive line was doing, but Dylan's maturation as a QB, right? So last year we saw him sit in the pocket just a tick too long. Last game, I actually made a comment that I saw him starting to sit there a tick too long. What can you do as a QB, and having been one before, to get that timing right and to understand exactly when you need to hit that hot route?
It sounds so simple, but a lot of that is practice and reps. I mean, really, you have to do that and get the ball out of your hand, get your hips turned, understand who you're identifying, understand, safety structure. And it's clear that Dylan has a really clear understanding of when these safeties do this, these linebackers are blitzing, or this nickel is blitzing, and this is my hot route. And from there, it's mechanics. It's let me get the ball, either get my fingers on or off the laces, however I'm going to choose to throw it, and get my hips and feet pointed in the right direction. And then being on the same page with the receiver, who has to see that, because, Jacob could have, or Marlon could have a corner route or a takeoff route, and they've got to see, okay, if this guy blitzes, I've got to break off my route and run the slant behind him or run a hitch. And when you see all those things working in unison, you're making the defense wrong nearly every time. And I think that it comes down to reps. I think that it comes down to Dylan being on the same page with the receivers. It's a part of really good coaching. And when you run an offense like ours, where people really have to try to bring pressure to slow us down, you can become deadly when you're able to see a blitz, anticipate it because of safety structure, anticipate it because of how you watch film, and then execute it like we've executed it thus far through great coaching and having everybody on the same page. And again, the offensive line has still got to be able to pick up their 5 key guys. Because if they're not doing their job, even a hot route is hard to get off because of pressure that can get up through the interior.
All right, I'm going to correct myself a little bit. Dylan did run for 2 times for 1 yard.
Okay.
He had.
Let's make sure we get him
his
that 1
longest was 1, and he averaged 0.5. So I was wrong with that. And then RJ Harvey, which I've never even heard of as a running back.
He's the
before.
Virginia transfer.
Yeah, he actually got a carry as well. That's what I thought. I was looking at the the final stats, but then there was a participation report lower. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. This defense is definitely a bend don't break defense, even though they break every once in a while and let somebody through. But the turnovers have been amazing this year so far with them. But the people are putting up some yards on our defense.
Yeah, I think bend don't break is a great way to put it. The turnovers have just really been incredible. I mean, I can't remember a time where I've seen a defense. I don't know if there's some statistic that I'm not knowing off the top of my head, but I can't remember when a defense has created like 10 turnovers 2 games in a row. Is that what that is?
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, that is going to win you a lot of football games. I think that there's areas that we can improve. I think that, I thought ECU's offense found some rhythm there in that game. That quarterback, was able to scramble out of the pocket and get some yards down the field. And obviously they do have some very talented wide receivers that we were really able to keep in check for a lot of the game. So I think that there's going to be times where we're frustrated throughout the season, and then our defense is going to, either pick up a big stop or create a turnover. But we're not going to get 4 to 6 turnovers every game. At least I don't believe that we will, based on just the law of averages. But, if we're able to continue this, the type of pressure and getting our hands on the football that we've been doing. I think that, like, if I was, like, as a coach, that, like, we're going to go and put up points, right? We're going to put up 30, 40, maybe 50 points. So that's how I would coach, is bend, don't break. And I think so far we've been doing a good job of executing that style.
Well, I think to your point, as fast as we go, the number of possessions that the defense has to defend is abnormal compared to everybody in the rest of the country, right? So they have, on this game, ECU had 15 possessions, so that we had to defend. Normally, you don't get that many possessions in a game. So I think our yards are going to be a little inflated. You saw that with Oregon back in the day. I think where the proof in the pudding, though, is that, for me, one of the stats I've been looking at lately is what's happening between the 40s. So if you're stopping people before they get to your 40, or do they even get past their own 40, I think that's a big part of it.
Sorry,
I think you've got a thunderstorm.
Yeah, I got a thunderstorm rolling in heavy.
All right. But anyway, the point that I was trying to make, too, is how much impact does being under pressure like that constantly have on a quarterback? Because I know Ehlers got hit that one time and he pretty much stopped running. So how much does that get in your head, and how does that impact your decision making?
It gets in your head quite often, or quite a bit. I'm not sure that it's a conscious thing, right? I'm not sure that if you talk to him, he'd be like, yeah, I just couldn't get comfortable because of all the pressure. But in the game, it's this subconscious feeling. It's like, if I'm getting pressure, I'm getting hit over and over, and they're getting to me, or they're creating a scenario where I'm uncomfortable, like, it's not a conscious thought, but it's like subconsciously, okay, now I'm starting to look for it. Now I'm starting to anticipate a guy getting through. Now I'm starting to maybe see ghost. And a lot of times in football, quarterbacks will say they saw a ghost, and, they'll be like, what? Well, in fact, like, the way that you're processing things, sometimes you can see things that aren't there. And I think that when you start to get pressure on somebody, and when you start to hit them, especially a quarterback throughout a game, like, they really subconsciously are changing the way that they're playing. And again, if you ask the quarterback the next day, like, hey, did you change your style? Did you, feel uncomfortable? Many times they probably say, like, no, not really, but, I just wasn't able to execute. When in fact, like, from a subconscious level, they started to feel that pressure, and it definitely affected, motor function and the way that they saw the field. And I think that if we can continue to put pressure on people and, create scenarios where we're either forcing a QB to get out of the pocket or, confusing him with what he's seeing in the defensive backfield, that'll serve well for us. But it was clear that Ayers, throughout the game was maybe starting to feel that subconscious pressure that was being created by our defense.
All right, I got to this is going to be a little bit of a different question. It's a little bit hypothetical thing. So if you were the coach of UCF and there was one thing that you could change or coach up from yesterday's game, including the penalties, I guess. I was going to try to take the penalties out of that to make it a little bit harder of a question. So maybe, let's forget about the penalties. If there was one other thing that you could coach up that you saw in yesterday's game that you would like to be better, what would it be?
This sounds weird considering the success that our wide receivers have had, but I would work on catching the ball in traffic. I would really focus on creating scenarios in practice or creating drills where we're catching the balls with guys getting their hands in there or guys trying to knock the arms down. I would just I'm sure they're coaching those things. I would really make it a point of emphasis because there are going to be teams that can score with us, and there are going to be teams that, take us into the fourth quarter. And some of those drops that we saw there in the third quarter where the defense was able to make some strong plays and get their hands on balls or knock the ball down, like those could be critical plays later on this season. So I think, again, I'm not knocking those guys at all, not even a little bit. I'm just saying that's somewhere that we are definitely going to have to continue to get better naturally throughout the course of the season, is catching the ball in traffic. And Marlon's done that as well as anybody across the country, but it would just continue to be a point of emphasis for me because we're going to get guys that are draped all over us. We're going to get teams that are trying to collision us as the season goes on. And I think catching the ball in traffic would be a focal point for me.
Interestingly enough, you hit on exactly what I wanted you to hit on and what I was thinking. I'm thinking right now, Gabriel Davis used to say how he used the jugs machine all the time after practice. I think Jacob Harris definitely needs to step up and use that jugs machine a little bit. He missed some that he should have easily caught. They were in his hands a couple times. So
I agree.
I hate to call one guy out, but that was the most visible one. One of them was a touchdown even. So Kyle, thank you very much again for joining us, man. We really appreciate it, and we love to talk to you.
I enjoy it, guys, as well. It was another I'm not sure that it was a fun game considering the way that it started, but it was enjoyable to see how we were able to pull away. And I think it shows, we're just a better team. And I'll say this, I thought about it last week. I think that our program's mindset and mentality has completely changed. And I literally think that we have made the step to the next level at what I was just talking about with defenses putting pressure on a quarterback. At a subconscious level, we literally believe that we are a very, very good football team. We believe on a conscious level now that we can play with anybody. And when you're able to struggle like we did early on, just from a penalty perspective and a little bit of adversity perspective, and then just put the pedal to the metal and run away with the game like we did, I think that shows that we've really taken that next step as a program where we expect to always win. And that's, as a guy that, feels like he helped lay that foundation, 15 years ago, we didn't always think that way. And we didn't always have this feeling that we could go in and win every game. You'd love to say that as an athlete, but the reality is that you knew there's some games you just didn't have the talent to win. And I think we've turned that corner. So it's been fun to watch. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how this season continues to unfold.
All right. We will talk to you next week after we play Tulsa at home.
All right, guys. Sounds good.
All right. Take it easy. Thank you.
You as well.
Welcome. This is a promo for the Take a Left at Albuquerque podcast, new to the Knightline Sports Network. You should listen to it. I say things like this.
We need to stop blaming Jerry because we would do the exact same thing if we owned the Dallas freaking Cowboys. Do you know how much fun it is to own the Dallas Cowboys?
My guests will say things sometimes like this.
It's the Lord of the Flies thing that happens when they don't understand that things are wrong, spoiler alert, until Piggy dies.
Lord of the Flies has been out for like 100 years. I don't even know.
Yeah. Sorry to everyone at home who I spoiled the book for. A book's been out for like 90 years or something.
And sometimes, rarely though, I'll say really stupid things like this. If they don't make it out of the West and the Raptors get to the finals, I will go on either this show or whoever's show and say that Kawhi Leonard is overrated because I have too much evidence of it. New episodes drop every Friday with me and some of my good friends right here on the Knightline Sports Network. Thank you for your time, and now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Oh, wait. I'm being told in my ear that this is a podcast, and there are no schedules. Well, this is awkward.
Welcome to this week's pole position.
All right, when you hear that, you know that it is time to talk about the position of the pole that UCF Knights are in.
All right, so let's get right to it. So this week, I was pleasantly surprised. Our AP voters actually had us in at number 11, and our coaches poll voters had us in at number 12. I was actually expecting us, with the Pac-12 coming back and the Big Ten coming back, to actually be a little bit lower than that. So I was pleasantly surprised. A lot of the AP voters themselves, they have the choice, because they can't include Big Ten now. They have the choice to leave them out. So even Mr. McMustache, as we like to affectionately call him, left the Big Ten and the Pac-12 out of it. So, at 11, I'm actually fairly happy with that. I saw a lot of inertia around 9, 10, and 11. So clearly, we didn't really lose much momentum around that.
We're about to crack that top 10 there.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? So 11 is the highest that we have had since the end of 2018 when we played LSU. And this being at number 11 at this time in the season is the earliest we have ever done that. So I think that speaks to the brand a little bit more. You heard some folks talk about the staying power. Herb Street was talking about the staying power of the brand and how the expectation is it's not just one season. So I think that's going to help us long-term in there. So there is a real chance, depending on who you talk to, there is a real chance that will help us in a leg up into the playoff. Golick, on the other hand, took the opportunity during our game to say how there wasn't a real chance for that to happen. Now, again, Golick wasn't saying, and I want to be very specific about this, Golick wasn't saying that he didn't believe we should be in that conversation. But what he was saying was the way that it's currently constructed is that there would be no way for us to get a college football playoff berth. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. The FPI that ESPN puts out, we talk about that every week, moved us down from 33% last week to a 27% chance and moved us down one position from 5 to number 6 to get into the playoffs. So two things to think about there. There's been a lot of conversation that we may have an expansion or at least a temporary expansion to 8 to allow teams from the Big Ten and Pac-12 that haven't been playing to participate. They want their participation trophy. So, if that's the case, we're in a great position at number 6. However, just the fact that we're saying right now that we have a 27% chance of making the college football playoff. Last year, I think the highest we got was something like 0.07 or something like that. So, that's huge. It's huge for the brand. That means the numbers are speaking to it. But again, the FPI is a numerical value, and the challenge that we have going from the BCS system to the college football playoff invitational tournament is that people are involved. So, and just as an aside, the USA Today had us in the Peach Bowl if they were doing it today versus the Gators. Do you think they'd duck a second one?
Probably. I would love to see that game, though. I think all UCF fans would love to see that game.
I think so, too. And
some of the Gator fans would love to see it, too, because they think that they could shut us up. But right now, I think that we could still beat that Gators team. So
absolutely. So then ESPN also put out an initial out there, and they said in this game, again, they would have us in the Peach Bowl versus Wisconsin, which Wisconsin always is in there till late in the year. So I'd be happy playing Wisconsin as well. Although
absolutely.
They're usually a bigger team, so I think they'd provide us a little more difficulty.
The Peach Bowl would be a great destination again. Hopefully by that time we'll be back to full stadiums and stuff like that. Probably not, but hopefully at that time. All right, let's go into this position by position breakdown that we're doing now. Let's start with the O-line.
All right, so I did things a little bit differently this week. Instead of going through it, and
you're doing a great job, by the way. I'm just sitting back and letting you talk. I love it. I'm digging this.
It's the extrovert in me.
It's good.
So, let's talk about the O-line a little bit. I didn't want to go into individual statistics this week. I wanted to look at it holistically as a unit, right? So some of the things that jumped out, obviously, and I use jumped, quote-unquote, air quotes, right? On the false start on every single lineman. So that was a unique stat. Every single lineman.
Did they already call it? Did they actually call one like that or not?
Yes, they called one that was on the entire O-line
because
they couldn't call it on one.
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't hear that. I was at Travis Devers' house during the game, and we were outside, and there was a TV out there that I could barely see, but we had some great food and a bunch of great drinks, so it was good.
Emphasis
it was
on
worth
the drinks.
not being able to see the game. So.
I
did rewatch it today. But.
Yeah, we actually did have one play where they called all the linemen, and then each one had the dubious distinction of being called on their own individual flag. So equal opportunity.
Ridiculous.
Equal opportunity flags this week. However, all that being said, I wanted to get that out of the way because the rest of the O-line play was absolutely outstanding. They held up the pocket the entire time. Dylan had an excellent amount of time to pick and choose where he was going, even with 7 defenders and overload blitzes in his face. So for him to have 0 sacks, and he really wasn't running out of the pocket or throwing any balls away either. I think there was one ball that I saw him actually throw it away. That speaks volumes about how this O-line played.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 0 sacks this game. And the running game, we talk about that a little bit later with Kyle, the running game really got going as well. Again, the first half of the game, they were trying to take that away from us, and they were loading the box. And with that being said, you saw some adjustments by Heupel. We definitely went with the vertical game, but again, they dealt with the rushing linemen. And then in the second half, they were back down to 3 down linemen. So that plays, and you saw those rushing lanes open up, and you saw guys play that. So it's pick your poison against us.
All right, well, let's talk about the running backs.
All right, so this week, unfortunately, Otis was injured. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. Otis, I don't think it's anything serious, so he should be back. Greg McCray, however, had a heck of a game. He had 16 carries, 83 yards, 5.2 yards per carry on average. And what strikes me about him is he's so patient. I mean, he just picks his holes.
And that's where he's been so great. And I'm so glad to see him back and to be healthy. We were a little bit worried after last week that he was going to come up with a little limp or whatever, but he's there. So that's awesome.
Next on the list, yeah, me too. I mean, he's just a phenomenal talent. Next on the list is, on our embarrassment of riches, is Bentavious Thompson. So he actually got 10 carries. Now, remember last week he took a little bit of a step back. He averaged like 2 yards per carry, but we've seen him run phenomenally well, and this week was no exception. 10 carries, 77 yards, 7.7 yard average. Phenomenal game. You can't ask for anything better than that.
This show is brought to you by Diet Mountain Dew, by the way, because Roger is all hyped up on some Diet Mountain Dew tonight.
Hey, but I love it, man. This and nerding out on stats, you know.
Yeah, no, you're doing a great job.
All right, Dylan Gabriel. I didn't really mention him here because he had a grand total of 1 yard. He really didn't need to run. I mean, that pocket was holding up the whole time, and we didn't need that aspect of the game. And then Mr. Richardson, you'll be hearing that name a little bit more.
I cannot wait to see him more.
Oh, dude.
I've said it earlier, but I'm dying to see more of him.
10.3 yards per carry this week, 12 yards per carry last week, and dude is a heat-seeking missile. I mean, once he turns those burners on, he is gone.
Yeah, like a military fighter jet. All right, what about the wide receivers? I was impressed with the wide receivers again this week, except for Jacob Harris. I'm calling Jacob Harris out this week.
Ooh.
I normally don't do that, but come on, man. Like, he just needs to work on the jugs machine.
Yeah,
just get out there and throw balls at him and make him catch them.
You know, we were talking about this a little earlier. He's got the talent. He's got the speed. He's got the size. He's got the ability to outleap defenders. The big thing is the hand strength. Once you get that ball in your midst, don't let those DBs pop it out. Then again, that being said too, for DBs to be in a position on a 6'5" wide receiver to be able to pop that ball out, that's hell of a play on the defensive back's part. We both played defense. We know how hard that is on a 6'5" guy. So kudos and a hat tip to ECU's defensive backs for playing that. Now, that being said, Marlon Williams had 13 catches this week for 136 yards, 0 TDs. And on the flip side of that, you saw Marlon get upended and catch some passes. It reminded me a little bit of Traquan Smith there.
Yeah.
So he had a 10.5 yard average, and his long was 24. Now, again, they're using Marlon a little bit differently than they are with Jalen Robinson, right? Because Jalen Robinson is wide out, and they're basically using him to replace Trey. So you see him doing the bubble screens, and the other thing that I kind of noticed, it reminded me a little bit of our favorite pass catcher from 2013, J.J. Wharton. If you remember, he was used a lot on those bubble screens on the sides. We're seeing Jalen doing that. And again, that's designed to stretch the field and get those guys out of the box. So we saw that quite a bit. And Jacob Harris was doing a good job, although he wasn't catching everything that was thrown at him. He was blocking everything that was thrown at him. So he did a great job on that, and he's getting much better. And then we did have a Tobias Creedel
Yeah, he actually caught some. Did he catch a ball, or he had a couple thrown at him? Okay, good. Yeah,
he caught 2. He had 9 yards and a 4.5 yard average.
All right, good. Yeah, Jalen Robinson, for his size, only 5'9", 163 pounds. He does a lot for being a little guy like that. So.
Yeah, and he was a former 4-star, and I mean this game
originally at Oklahoma.
Yeah, he averaged 16.7 yards per catch. So he's kind of taken that spot that Trey had. He was down there. He had that big 64-yard catch, and part of that was a communication breakdown on ECU's part, but he just outran the coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. That was incredible. There was no way anybody was catching him at that point, wide open in space like that. All right, let's talk about the defense a little bit. I think they had a great game, really.
Yeah, and I'm not going to focus on the D-line so much this week. Last week we saw the D-line come up big. They were getting passes intercepted. They were blocking things. They were getting in the lanes. Hands were up. Everything that you're taught as a defensive lineman. And that's something I want to point out, too, is you see that Randy Shannon's teaching them fundamentals. One of the things that they taught me in high school, even when I was there, when you're a linebacker and you're getting in a passing lane, even if you're not at where the part of the play is, you get your hands up. Right? Because if you're blocking the view or blocking a lane for a quarterback to pass, you do that. You saw that with the defensive linemen. They were getting tip balls, and I'm very, very happy to see those fundamentals out there. That being said, let's talk a little bit about the linebackers. They had a sneaky, quiet, good game. Eric Gilliard, who you heard from a little earlier, 6 tackles, 6 solos, 2 tackles for a loss. He was in the backfield quite a bit this game, and he had 1 fumble recovery, so great game for him. Eric Mitchell, who was extremely quiet last game, really showed out this game. He had 8 tackles, 3 solos. Tatum Bethune, he was a little quieter this week, 3 tackles, 3 solo. And there's a Quaid Mosier sighting, 4 tackles, 2 solo. Now remember, he is the freshman who we're all excited about, who's extremely fast. He's a big dude. He did well in high school. And the camp was absolutely...
How do you say his last name?
Mosier?
I think it's just Mosier, isn't it?
It might be.
I don't know. Maybe not.
We don't have those phonetic guys.
Well, I'll have to see if I can find it. There may be one for him. Anyway.
So
sorry, I was just asking.
No, that's all right. I can screw up every once in a while. I see how it is.
I wanted to hear your French accent again.
Mosier. Anyway, but if you remember, camp was absolutely buzzing. We didn't hear much, but every time that they would be asked, hey, who's kind of standing out, his name was called. So he's clearly learning. A lot of what you heard was he was very studious, and he's obviously playing well enough to play. Yeah, and then next on our list is Andrew's favorite position group, the defensive backs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just not. I'm not very enthused.
This is Andrew hyped up on Diet Mountain Dew as well. We had a little clap of the can in the bottle earlier. But
I'm coming down off of my caffeine high at the moment.
Nice.
That's why I'm just letting you talk.
Yeah, I'm still coasting. I'm sky high, man. All right. So going back to the defensive backs, we'll start with Richie Grant. He had a phenomenal game, which is what we expect from him. He's the senior, and we had a lot of expectations for him this year. 3 tackles, 2 solos, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 interception. He was in the backfield quite a bit. You'll see him come up and play when we're blitzing that safety, and he did a great job. Great surprise for me. Quiet. I didn't hear his name called a lot, but Aaron Robinson. So we were expecting a lot from him. He's been playing that nickel spot all game, but he had not only 8 tackles, 7 solo, 1 tackle for a loss, and 2 passes defended. Now, if you look through the stats over the last couple games, you don't see a lot of passes defended. He was sticking on his guys like glue. You could tell he was in good position, and he played really, really well. So very happy for Aaron. He's one of those quiet, under-the-radar guys you don't hear about, but he's having a phenomenal season, and that'll set him up well for the NFL next year. Antoine Collier. Why did I say that way? Collier. I want to say everything in French.
Oh, man.
Antoine Collier.
Collier. By the way, he's one of my favorite players. I just love the way that this kid plays. He doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care about his body. It was kind of the same way that I tried to play in college. I didn't care. I didn't care what I did to myself. I just cared what I did to the other player. And, back in the day, there was no targeting penalties or any of that. So
dude, if you had a receiver coming across the middle, it was go time.
Yeah, and if there were not targeting penalties, you would see a much different guy with Collier. He's that kind of guy. I think he, as kind of thin that he is, I think that he has a chance to make it to the next level just because of that. I mean, he just doesn't care.
He's definitely got a truck stick, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yep, 4 tackles, 3 solos, and again, 2 passes defended. So
and he popped out that ball with his head as well. On that one play.
Yeah. He put his helmet right on the ball.
Yep.
So you could see that he was definitely going for that. Zamari Maxwell, he had some challenges this game. However, he did have 4 tackles, 3 solos, 1 pass that he defended against Johnson. He was on Johnson, which is a tough assignment. Dude's a big guy and experienced and really good. They kind of pulled him for Devontae Dawson because he was making some mistakes. He was also playing soft coverage on a couple of those plays. So I don't know if it's because he was covering Johnson or what that was, but he was pulled through the game.
He's had some issues, and this is what we were kind of worried about when we heard that he was going to be in that starting spot. That he had some issues last year. So it's not surprising to me that he's still having some issues. Hopefully he will get better throughout the year.
Yep, and next on the list we have Dylan Lester. We heard a lot about him.
You sure it's not Lestier?
Lestier this week. You know what? I'm going to just say everybody's name with an "yay" at the end of it. Oh, my goodness.
Derek Gainier.
I'm going to do it. You
Corey
watch.
Thornton.
But, yeah, Lester had 3 tackles.
Tatum Bethune.
Wow.
Oh,
I think
that
Diet Mountain Dew high is coming back. I don't know what's going on over
Richie
here.
Grant.
Yay! You got to go with the yay. All right.
Oh man.
So
if people haven't stopped listening now,
they should, right? So 3 tackles, 3 solos, 1 fumble recovery for Lester. So again, consistently getting better, playing well, and there's a lot of high expectations for him. Remember, he was injured last year, and there was a lot of buzz in camp about him as well.
Did you get into my stash? Is that what?
No. Wow. Nope. Only Diet Mountain Dew here, man. All right. Next, we have Derek Genus getting some playing time as well. 6 tackles, 4 solos. So he made a good use of his time and his snaps as he was out there. And then Corey Thornton, again, one of those freshmen we were talking about. 2 tackles, 2 solo. He was the freshman All-American that we were looking for. And then, like I said, D-line, no one really stood out. They all played really well. Charlton was back in the backfield again. Cam Good was in the backfield quite a bit, so getting that pressure. He played well. Montalvo had 1 fumble recovery this week, so that's phenomenal as well. So being very disruptive.
Awesome. All right. Well, and then kicking, we saw Andrew Osteen with 3 punts for 118 yards, 29.3 average, which isn't crazy, but 56-yard long. And we saw Obarski get to kick some field goals finally.
Obarski.
Yeah, but he can kick. I'm surprised, and the announcers were really surprised that they weren't letting him, kick on some of those 4th down things earlier in the game that were a little farther out. I'm surprised at that because I know that he has the range.
Yeah, and I think range has never been the problem. I mean, remember, this was the guy on kickoffs that we were talking about that was kicking out of bounds last season.
Hasn't done it yet this season.
No, he looks a lot better. I'm hoping he consistently kicks it far and keeps it within. But you're right, 3 for 3, 33 for the long. However, every one that he put through the uprights, it looked like he had plenty of leg underneath it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that's good. All right, some great stats there, Roger. Good going on all that stuff. You're very statistical.
I'm a geek.
You said it. I didn't. All right, so let's talk about the making the grade. A little bit of poll action.
Yeah, so the genesis of this was...
Maybe we need to start putting our own poll out on this after the games on Twitter.
I think that's a good idea.
Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, so...
I'll have to remember to do that.
The genesis of
Remind me.
I will set a reminder on your phone.
Okay.
All right. No, but, the genesis of this is I read a lot, right? And I like to read, and I like to read up on UCF. And, there's multiple sources. You see me active on Twitter, mostly retweeting. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through all my thoughts on things. But I want people to be informed. And then also, UCFsports.com is a great repository for knowledge. And it's put on by Brandon Hellwig, and he does a great job with it. So shout out to Brandon. You've heard him here before.
And Rivals.
Yes, and Rivals. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of conversation that's relevant to our community. And one of the things that they were putting out there on both Twitter and on Rivals is grading our team on this game. And I was dismayed, to say the very least, about some of the thoughts about our team and how people were grading them. I saw a lot of C's and D's, right? So I kind of wanted to bring this up. Part of this, to me, one, is it's just absolutely crazy that we literally killed ECU 51. It ended up, they had 4 scores, but realistically it was 51-14 was what the score really was.
Right.
And it's not too far removed that I remember ECU was a big game and a rivalry game, etc. And now, we talk about the expectations game and how UCF fans have kind of shifted that trend upward. So for me, it's okay. There's context for this conversation. Are we talking about grading them versus other potential playoff teams? Or are we talking about within the
what is the standard?
AC? What are we thinking about here?
Well, just a few short years ago, we weren't even close to what we are now. You know what I'm saying? Think all the way back to 2015.
That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
5 years.
Not that long ago, and we would have given anything to have a team like we have now.
Yeah, and so for me, it's like even further back than that. I mean, how many years did we grumble about George O'Leary and the limited offense that he put out there? Because, his game plan was different. He wanted to play a pro-style offense, and he wanted to limit possessions, which was great against teams like our current team, right? So the high-flying offenses like Houston and those folks back then. But now we're talking about a team, and, we drubbed them 51-24. Yeah, there were penalty issues, right? But, guys, they played for 2.5 quarters and beat ECU 51-24.
Yeah.
I mean, get with it. So I would like for us to give our grades of UCF's performance today. So with that, Andrew,
51-28, by the way,
or 28,
but whatever.
Excuse
it doesn't matter. 6 and 1/2 dozen to the other. So I'm going to give a grade of B+ for this game. I give that grade because we played pretty well, but we had some glaring issues. The glaring issues obviously being the penalties. But besides those penalties, I don't really see a lot that could have been much better. I mean, there's not anything that I look back on the game when I close my eyes and think deeply while I'm painting my little trees about this game. Nothing disappoints me except for those penalties. So, I even could make it. It's close between an A- and a B+.
All right, so for me, I will take a solid B on this one, and here's why I say it's a solid B. So there's 2 ways I could look at this. If we're looking at us as what our proposition or where our position is relative to the other potential college football playoff teams, we would want to be more buttoned up than what we showed today on the field. So that's part of it. The other part about it is potential. I mean, you heard Dylan talk about it a little bit here. They are not clicking at 100% on their cylinders, nor would I expect them to second game in without the benefit of any tune-up games, right? I mean, normally we have 4 out-of-conference games that we play before we get to this point in the season, and so I think there's a lot of potential for them to move forward. But no way on God's green earth would it be a D or a C. Come on, people.
Yeah, absolutely not. The other thing is I think we play down to our competition. I really do. If we were playing a better team than ECU, I bet we would have had a better performance. in general. I think the guys would have been up for it. This is the first one that we've technically played with nobody in the stands. There were 305 people in the stands.
All
but
parents.
Still, that's nobody compared to what we're used to playing in front of. I think that makes a huge difference. I really do. So I'm going to give a little bit of that to that scenario as well.
Okay, so, your B+, though, I mean, that's a far cry from a C or a D.
Well, I mean, I think that we're a little bit more educated than some of the fans. Some of the fans, I really think, started watching football in 2017. That's what happens with a program like this. When you go from, not on the national stage to really being on the national stage. You get a lot of people coming in that are fans all of a sudden and don't know the history of the program and don't know a lot about football. They're just kind of bandwagoning or whatever coming on. I'm not saying a lot of the people in the dungeon, obviously there aren't a lot of them, but there are some of them that just don't know a lot about the game. So, and especially on Twitter. Well, you have to take a lot of these things with a grain of salt.
Well, yeah, and I think the other part about it is it's just a reality check for everyone, right? I mean, dude, 51-28. I mean, any team that gets beat 51-28, you would say that team had a good day.
Right.
And, it just frustrated me. And
I think a couple of years ago, we also talked about how the expectation, and you talked about it a little bit, is so much higher now compared to what it was. So you have to kind of look at both of those things. You have to kind of look like, okay, is our expectation sometimes getting a little ridiculous?
I think our expectation is that we're Ohio State, to be honest.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's good, right? That just
it
speaks
is good.
to the quality
It's
of the
good.
program. But the
then
other
again,
side of
you
it
have to
is-
have a little bit of a reality check every once in a while and really think about that.
Yeah.
51-28. We would have loved to have any game be that just a few years ago.
Agreed.
So I just think we need to check ourselves just a little bit and, just see it for what it is and enjoy it.
Yep, I'm looking forward to seeing 4 quarters of them playing at their potential. So
yeah, and we may see that this season, we may not.
Yeah.
I mean, when we get into a shootout or something, if it's possible, or we get into a situation, there's some games later on in the year that it could be like that. You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know what's going to happen. But I would just be happy, more than happy with what we have right now. And just hopefully it continues to get even better.
I agree.
So, all right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about ons and ends?
There's some stuff here that we could talk about. Now, how would you say this guy's name? Because I can't ever say this guy's name.
Mason Chilawa.
Okay. He's transferring.
Correct.
He's gone.
He's in the portal.
Yeah. So he was one of the guys that opted out this year, and he's taking it a little bit farther, which is fine. Good luck to him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've met him actually a few times. He's a great guy, so I wish him luck in whatever he's doing. And again, any Knight that has devoted their time to playing for us, if they choose to take their talents elsewhere, more power to you. Once a Knight, always a Knight. For the most part.
For the most part. It depends on where you go. But anyway, LSU, the first national champ to lose their home openers since 1998 because of...
Was this a conference-only kind of thing because they didn't start with their tune-up games?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think they were pretty depleted as far as people graduating and people going to the NFL and stuff like that. It normally happens after you win the national championship. A lot of players, think, oh, it's my time. It's my time.
Well, they had several people that opted out because of this COVID thing, too. I think they were missing something like 18 people off their roster.
Okay.
So,
well, they lost.
Yep.
I mean, it's part of football in 2020. You have to move on.
Well, that's where they talk about depth, right?
Yep.
So, all right, here's something that's near and dear to my angry little heart. This waiver process, right? So let's talk about this a little bit. We're seeing the Justin Fields of the world being able to get their waiver right away. I mean, a lot of these SEC teams, the Big Ten teams, all these guys they're done within a week, right? So now we've got Devod Wilson who's sitting out there, and he's been tweeting a little bit about his thoughts about being close to being approved. But we have several guys that were transferred for COVID reasons that everybody's leveraging that are not approved. And this is remember the grinds my gears? This really grinds my gears because, what are these guys doing? Is it the P5 versus G5 thing? He's been transferred. He's transferred months now. There is no reason why he should not have been approved at
I'm
this
sure
point.
there are some situations that we don't know that has something to do with this stuff.
But that's 3 of our guys. The only one that has made it, there were 4 total transfers. The only one that has made it is Harvey. And you talked about him a little bit earlier from Virginia. He's the only one that's been approved. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. That is a little crazy.
I'm angry.
Yeah, it sounds like
rabble.
Yeah. It sounds like you're angry. Hypo was on Jim Rome this week.
Yeah. So
I didn't get to hear it, but
yeah, he got wrecked. No, he actually he went on there, and Jim has actually had Heupel on a few times before, but he did a great job. He was on there. He was talking about the team, and any bit of national exposure, whether you like Jim Rome or not, he's got a huge following.
He does,
and
he's
so
a little hard to listen to sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
He does a great job. Yeah.
But, got to respect the game and what he's doing, and, any bit of
I used to
exposure.
listen to him back in the day a lot. I just don't anymore. Seattle Seahawks promote Shaquem Griffin to the active roster, thank goodness.
Yeah, you were talking about that before, how you expected that to happen.
Yeah, I figured it would happen sooner than later. I mean, who knows for how long, I mean, they can move them back and forth. They're a little short on linebackers, so, so that's good. Where do we rank in the big 3 of Florida? This could be an interesting conversation. I think right at the top, with Florida a close behind, maybe.
Well, you heard my take on my hot take about that, right? So I think we're number 1. So the question is, Florida or Miami? FSU is not a statistically valid data point at this point.
No.
They're just they're terrible.
No, and I'm the type of guy that, I mean, I have more. I think I have probably more friends that if they're not UCF fans, they're probably Florida State fans, and I appreciate the Florida State fans a lot more than the Gator fans and the Miami fans for sure. So, I mean, I hate to see it in a way for Florida State. I do, but then again, I love to see it at the same time.
Yeah, it gives us an opportunity to shine. Yes.
I would say it would be us. I'm actually going to put Miami in front of Florida.
Really?
Yeah, because Florida's only played once. I'm gonna vote on this by what I've seen, instead of what I've heard about.
This is a new version of AP underscore Phegley, right?
It's the AP poll.
Yeah, it's the AP
This is
voter.
the real AP poll. Maybe I should start doing that too. That's a good idea.
Every once in a while. Inspiration strikes.
Yeah. So this week's real AP Florida poll is, I'm going to say UCF number 1. I'm going to say Miami number 2, Florida number 3, and then Florida State number 4.
Okay.
And I don't know about the rest of them because I don't care.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does.
I'm not going to put, especially that school out west.
Well, they're going to rank -9 right now anyway. They can't even play. They didn't even get to play this week.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a Florida poll every week, and I'll be the only voter.
Oh boy.
Yeah, let's see what happens with that, because we'll include FAU, FIU, all them.
Those guys.
Bethune-Cookman even. I mean, I'll throw Bethune-Cookman in. I'll throw. Who else? Coastal Florida. Do they have a team? I don't even know.
No, not a football team. Northwest Florida has had the championship team for Division III, I believe, last year.
That would be West Florida.
West Florida, right. Sorry.
University of West Florida, the Argonauts, which, if the Division II, or I think they were Division III. Division II or III, I can't remember. If they were playing, that would be my team, by the way. Because my stepdaughter goes there now. So, Pensacola.
Yeah, but just the fact that they won the national championship, I was very happy for them last year.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. That school as well, UWF, is kind of like a little mini UCF. I think they're coming along. And I don't know if they'll probably never be as big, but I think they're coming along with their sports. And if you go to their campus, it kind of reminds you of a little bit of it. It has a UCF vibe, and it's one of the reasons why my stepdaughter went there. So a little bit, smaller, but Still has that vibe. They have a lot of good things going on there. Anyway, what else here?
We've got the Orange Bowl Classic that we were talking about, the Hoops Tournament. Everybody was excited about that last year because we had UF, FSU, us, and FAU in that. And that's a very prestigious tournament. And just the fact that we get to play FSU and UF in the tournament was exciting. We all thought that it was in jeopardy, but John Rothstein, who is a basketball beat reporter, pretty well known, he came out and said it's still on. So the exciting stuff, we know now November 25th is going to be the start of college basketball, but it looks like that tournament is still going to be on.
It's going to be the start of some football as well.
Yeah.
With the teams starting in November. Mountain West is back now. Everybody's back playing like 6 games, which is
I
really
think the
stupid.
Pac-12 actually has 6 games, which is
and
which
Mountain
is
West
ridiculous.
has 6 or 7. Big Ten has 6 or 7, I think. So that'll be interesting. Another thing that's interesting though, Blake Bortles signed with the Broncos this last week, and with AJ Boye out there, and I don't think that he played today. But he was on the active roster, dressed out. He should have played if he didn't. I did not watch the end of that game. But Jeff Driscoll was really throwing the ball bad. In fact, he threw it into the ground a couple times when he meant to throw it downfield. So I don't know what's going on with that. But hopefully Blake, even though I hate the Broncos more than probably, besides the Raiders, I hate the Broncos second most. I would have rooted for them today because I'm not a Tampa fan. But anyway, I hope
both of those guys from Oviedo, both Driscoll and Bortles.
Yeah. So, I hope that Blake gets a chance to play out there, not against my Kansas City Chiefs, though.
Hold on, you didn't say his name right. It was Blake Bortles.
Bortles. All right, we'll take a break, and next we'll open the Ask Knightline inbox, next on Knightline 238.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each and every week on the Knightline Sports Network for the AAC Report. We bring you in-depth coverage of each school in football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf, tennis, and more, as well as bring you insider interviews and focus in on the biggest games and news of the week. That's all right here each week on the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
Hey Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up the menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
Ask a Knightline is brought to you by Chad Barr Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Barr Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Barr Law today. All right, time again for Ask Knightline. We're answering your questions that you posed on our Facebook page or via Twitter at #AskKnightline. The first one is from me and Angus. I love some of these names, by the way. That has always been one of my absolute favorite names on Twitter, me and Angus.
I don't know. All these names are starting me to think about steak. Every time, last week on Knightline at night, I was hangry and we were talking about steak, and now, thank you, Angus. You're making me hungry.
We've got another one from Night Sausage 24 as well. But anyway, Yeah, so me and Angus ask, was ECU really doing something that led to all the false starts? Is this technically illegal? Also, any updates on injuries as always? All right, so yeah, we talked about this earlier, but I still wanted to include it because you included it, because you asked the question. So I greatly appreciate all these questions. Yeah, they were making noises, they were saying phrases, they were doing all kinds of stuff to help our guys jump off sides. I don't think that it's legal. I mean, we'll have to do a rule book search, I guess, to see if they can use their mouths or whatever to make noises to make you jump off. I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. The only updates on injuries that we have currently is that Otis Anderson went out of the game for some reason, and his mom says from Twitter that he's okay and he'll be back, even though she is forbidden to talk about these were her words. She is forbidden to talk about injuries, but she says Otis is fine. So we got that. All right, the next one from Golden Knight 2 on Twitter. What's your take on the defense? I know we forced several turnovers, but trying to contain mobile quarterbacks or pressuring them seems to be a big issue. I'll let you take that one.
All right, I was hoping you would. So a couple of things on that. You got to understand what we're trying to do with our defense, right? So one thing we're doing is we're taking our defensive backs and we're putting them one-on-one man coverage against receivers. So we feel confident enough in that. A lot of the time it's single high safety, which means there's one safety up at the top. But sometimes we crash him down on the box as well and try to rush the quarterback. So if you watch our defensive fronts, our defensive linemen, they're constantly trying to be aggressive and get towards the quarterback. And one of those things that when you watch that, it on a mobile quarterback especially, it can be tough because if you don't get there, there's nobody really there's nobody there really to catch you if you fall, right? So what we're trying to do is be super aggressive on defense, make sure that we're getting after the quarterback, get in his head a little bit, hopefully stopping. And the counter to that is when you have teams that run side to side. So on an option team, for example, right? If someone's trying to run to the sideline, what you're trying to do is get into the backfield, overload that pressure at the beginning, get into the backfield before the play develops and that guy can get outside. So, or the quarterback can keep it. Now, the key to all of that for our defense is to make sure whoever is assigned to spy or watch the QB and fill that gap is making sure that they're scraping properly. That's usually a linebacker along the line and keeping that quarterback contained. Unfortunately, our linebackers have not been doing a great job of that the first couple of games, but I'm sure Randy will get that figured out. So overall, it tells me that we have a lot of confidence in our defensive backs, even our freshman defensive backs that we have playing out there. It tells me that we want to be aggressive with the ball, and obviously we're teaching fundamentals and going for turnovers. Even on tackles, you saw one of the guys, I can't remember who it was, who had a hit, and he was trying to strip the ball. The guy still went down, but instead of tackling him like you normally would, he was trying to knock the ball out. So we're clearly going for turnovers so that we can score points.
Yeah, what Roger said, basically. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's that big of an issue. Yes, it would be nice to get 10 sacks a freaking game, but I'm pretty happy with what our defense is doing, especially when our offense is doing so well.
Well, and remember, O-line depth is typically not something that other offenses have to be able to rotate those guys. So by constantly going after those O-linemen and getting those turnovers and turning into more possessions, you're slowly wearing them down, kind of like we do with their offense. And we have a number of D-linemen that we're rotating through there constantly. So we control that when that happens, because the other offenses typically are going to slow the game down, which gives us enough time to rotate our guys, unlike our offense, which does just the opposite.
Yeah, okay. At UCF MSU Clemson. So this guy is obviously a UCF fan, a Mississippi State fan, and a Clemson fan, I guess.
So he should be really happy right now.
And yeah, so he asks what happened to Trey Nixon. Well, we're not totally sure because UCF does not talk about injuries, but we're assuming that it's a collarbone issue. Either way, he's hurt. He's not expected to be back for a little while at least. We haven't really heard too much because they don't talk about injuries. Unless the player comes on Twitter and talks about his own injury, they're not going to say anything. So that's what we know.
Minimum 6 to 8 weeks if it's a broken collarbone.
If it's a broken collarbone. If it's a separated shoulder, it may be a little bit less than that or whatever. And an un-UCF related question, he says, what are your thoughts on MSU's victory over LSU? We talked a little bit about it. I mean, I think it's great. I'm not a big LSU fan, and I haven't been a big LSU fan even before we played them in that bowl game, but definitely not after playing them in the bowl game. Yes, they were the national champions last year, but they're not anymore. So,
I'd love to see some more parity in the SEC. So for me, anytime another team can come up, and I believe that's the great Leach experiment down there as well.
Yep.
So remember, that type of offense was not supposed to work in the SEC. So if anything, it demonstrates that our type of offense can also work in the SEC and against the SEC when we get those big games.
Absolutely. And, so you're seeing a little bit of that as well. And there is a correlation between Mike Leach and Josh Heupel as well. So
yeah, they were Leach was a coordinator when Heupel was
an assistant.
Yep.
So yes, so that's good for us, especially since that stuff is starting to work there. I love that guy. Mike Leach is the most entertaining coach.
Just
that
do
there
yourself
is.
a favor and follow his Twitter.
Absolutely, yeah, and catch any press conference that you can that guy talks in. You guarantee you will be entertained and be like, did he really just say that? There was one like a couple of weeks or a couple of years ago, I think maybe it was last year or the year before, where he was talking and the reporters that talk to him will bait him with questions because they know they're going to get some weird answer. They ask him about a mascot or something, and he went on throughout all the Pac-12 because he was in the Pac-12 at that point. And he went through all their mascots, basically, and said why, the Wildcat or whatever
is the best one.
Is the best one, and totally broke it down, too. It was crazy. It was funny. Oh, man.
That one and the other one that I remember that was super good is when he was talking about wedding planning.
Yeah, he talks about the weirdest stuff, but he's hilarious. Very funny guy. All right, Knights Sausage 24. Knights. I'm interested about this one. This handle, Knights Sausage 24. Aaron Taylor's AAC better than the Big 12, or Randy Cross UCF is as good as anyone in the Big 12. These are quotes. Obviously, one of them Aaron Taylor and the other one Randy Cross. I think both of them are correct. Maybe Oklahoma could give us a little bit of run for their money, but they lost a game they shouldn't have.
K-State.
Yeah. Kansas State beat them. And I do believe, as a whole, the AAC is better than the Big 12 at this point. I mean, top to bottom.
We've had more ranked teams, and you look at OSU, and they struggled against Tulsa last week. I mean, that, to me, really signaled. Now, if we go through and knock on wood, I'm literally knocking on wood here, and do what we should against Tulsa next week, then that's a great, when you're talking about, that's a great comparison. And I truly believe Tulsa, number one, their defense is phenomenal. I think OSU showed it's a pretender. And I don't think the Big 12 has the depth that it normally does at the top end of that particular conference this year.
Right. All right, Brian W. Peterson, the next one here. This one is a little, there's a lot of words here. Should we legitimately continue to expect to play in parentheses, and win the conference championship after seeing the game at ECU? I'm less than thrilled. Memphis and Cincy will capitalize on our mistakes that ECU didn't. Penalties, drop passes, and a defense allowing ECU to move the chains on 3rd and 20. A lot to be cleaned up. Can we expect to have 3 to 4 turnovers in our favor per game against better teams and pad the score like we've seen against Georgia Tech and ECU? I really don't think that this was that bad of a game. There were parts of this game, yes, that were bad. There were things that we could fix in this game, but like we were saying just a little while ago, this was not that bad of a game. I think people are like getting a little bit more excited about it than should. Memphis is not a problem, by the way. I've been telling you all this.
They haven't even played yet this year.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they're not a problem like they were before. I think they played one game, right? I think they played one game, and they weren't impressive. They're not a problem. I don't know why we keep mentioning Memphis.
You're right, because that was the game that I brought up where I was not impressed with their defense at all.
Yeah, and they played they played a FBS team or something.
FCS.
FCS.
Yeah.
That's what I get that mixed up all the time. But anyway, yeah, they played an FCS team. Arkansas State, I think, or something like that. Anyway, we'll get these things fixed. It was just one game. I believe that we were playing down to our competition. Our guys were not as excited as they probably should have been. This game does not concern me, especially because in the long, in the gist of things, when you look at the final score and the stats, you realize that it was not that bad of a game. Garbage time scores by ECU for the most part, and we won 51-28. I mean,
and we shut down our offense for the fourth quarter, too. So that's the other thing, too. Remember, we would have had better scoring efficiency on that as well. And to piggyback off of what...
And I'm not dogging you for asking this question.
No.
I'm not at all. I'm just saying that I really think that we need to look at it for what it was. And, yes, I think that we can still win the entire freaking thing with this team. A couple things need to be fixed.
Yep. So, Brian, I recommend you take a step back from the keyboard, chug a Diet Mountain Dew, and get excited, man, because, yes, I 100% believe that we will win this conference.
This guy knows what he's talking about, and he's not like,
Yeah. No.
We've had a lot of questions, really good questions from him. I'm not dogging you at all. I'm not.
Now, Cincy, I am a little bit more worried about because Cincy has a great defense. And Andrew has talked about this when we were previewing. They showed it again against Army today. Army was, or yesterday, yeah, whatever. They're all blurring together. But they do have a great defense. They did great against the triple option, which is always tough to defend. And they're a well-coached defensive team. Desmond Ritter, on the other hand, looked like trash. So,
they're not, they have a defense.
Yeah, they have a defense. So whenever you have a defense, you're going to be in a game. I think that can we rely on 3 or 4 turnovers a game? No. Do I think that we stop them with enough frequency, and especially given what we have going on? Yes. Do I think we win Remember, they hit a last-second field goal on us last year with a freshman quarterback who had turnovers and interceptions last year. Yeah. That's not going to happen again.
Used a completely different defense than we'd ever seen from them. They'll probably come up with a completely new defense that we've never seen from them before. They're a defensive team. They have a great defense. But,
and a great coach. Luke Fickell is a great coach.
Right. That probably shouldn't be at Cincinnati anymore, but that's another story. But anyway, I wouldn't worry about it. Just enjoy what we've got going on. I really don't think that it was that bad, minus all the penalty action.
I do want to say, too, just to add on to what Andrew was saying, is I appreciate all of these because we got, we've gotten 2 or 3 a week, and now, you guys are sending in more. We appreciate these, and it gives us something to talk about and think about and understand what you are thinking. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for sending those in.
All righty. Thank you very much. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
Former University of Central Florida President Dale Whitaker, who resigned in February 2019 in the midst of a controversy over the school's construction spending, has accepted a job with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Whitaker, 59, will work with colleges and universities to increase opportunities for first-generation college students, students of color, and students from low-income families. He said Thursday in an email, Monday is his first day in the full-time position. Initially, He'll work remotely, but eventually intends to move to the Foundation's headquarters in Seattle.
That's a good gig for him. I'm happy that he got that. Yom Kippur starts this Sunday evening at sundown. Observing Jews will begin their 25-hour fast immediately at sunset at 6:57 p.m. on Sunday. Typically, those who follow the holiday would spend most of the day in synagogue, but the pandemic does not allow for large social gatherings. So, the Chabad at the University of Central Florida is helping the campus's approximately 7,000 Jewish students take part in the holiday, even from a distance. They will host socially distant services for those who feel comfortable for attending, and for those who wish to stay at home, the Chabad will be offering students a Yom Kippur do-it-yourself-at-home kit, which will include a booklet with passages. I think that's really cool, actually, and I hate to bring like religious things into a sports show, but some of this news stuff is getting a little light. There's not a lot of sports going on, all that stuff. So I wanted to kind of focus on some good things that were happening for people from UCF and at UCF on this news and notes thing. So that's why we put that in there. It is a good thing, and I'm glad they're doing it. All right, this has been Knightline 238. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold, charge right through the line. Victory is our cry. BSETO, our 2 9 Knights will